Hi everyone, so every week at the HTM workshop, we've been going over different tools and tips and tricks to help you be a better technician. So this week, we're gonna go over a really classic repair that you should know how to do. And that's how to replace the plug end of an electrical cord, right? So this really doesn't apply too often to removable power cords. I mean, if you have a removable power cord, usually you're just gonna toss the bad one and get a new one. But if you have a non-removable cord or a cord that's extremely expensive with perhaps something like a cord reel or sometimes some of these cord parts can be pretty expensive. So I'm going to show you how to replace the end of the plug. So for instance, right here, you can see there's a little bit damage. Maybe this has been run over or clipped by something. So I have this right here. I'm going to replace it with this plug end right here. Let's go ahead and get started by taking the old plug head off. Okay, so to do this repair, you really don't need a whole lot of tools. You're going to need a screwdriver, wire cutters and strippers, the cord you're trying to repair, and the plug end. Right now, I'm using a hospital grade plug end. You see that with the green dot. And that's because I work with medical equipment, but if you're doing repairs for other types of equipment, you wouldn't need that necessarily. So one of the first things we're going to do is we are going to take off this cap of our plug. Just use a screwdriver in this case. Using a Phillips head. This one's actually able to do both flat and Phillips. Right, so now I have the cap here, and you can see where we're eventually going to place the copper wires from our cord into these three different holes here. But we're going to put that to the side for a second. And we're going to get this cord through the end here, and this is going to clamp down and crimp down on my insulation. But to do that, I need to loosen up some screws here. You're going to have to loosen those up enough to fit the insulation through. Right, there we go. And we can just leave that there for a while. So our next step is to take away this gray insulation so we can get to these three inner wires. That way we can eventually connect them to this end cap. All right, so there's some different ways to do this. You could use your wire cutters, especially if you have a good sharp blade right there. My wire cutters are pretty dull, so I'm going to go ahead and just use a blade to do this. You want to measure about 2 inches right here. Just carefully work your blade around, being very careful not to go into the other insulating layer. So you don't want to hit the insulation on any of these inner wires here. You want to keep those intact because you're going to leave those intact that far down the cord. So once you strip off that outer insulation, it's good to just go ahead and check, make sure you did not accidentally hit any of the insulation there. And we have any exposed wire. I don't see any issues, so I think we're all good. If you did hit this inner insulation, what you can do is just snip those off and start again, because you really don't want to have any bare insulation right there. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do, it's good practice to keep your ground wire a little longer than your hot and the neutral. And that's because you want this to be the last thing to fail. You want this is your sort of safety protection, right? Creating a low resistance path to ground. So you want to clip the hot and the neutral just a bit so that if this cord does fail, this cord end does fail, that these two things are going to come out of electrical contact before your ground. Okay, so obviously now we got to strip away the insulation at the ends here so that we can fit those into our plug cap. And then there's little metal plates in there that you can see. And as let me show you how this works. Bring our driver head in. All right, as this twists, you're gonna see that gold plate, brass plate, start to compress. And that's gonna be what creates contact with the conducting wire in our cord. You know, so one thing is if you don't know what kind of standard gauge wire you're using, you can always just start with the largest that you have and work your way down, which is what I'm doing right now. All right, so once you have all three of these insulators stripped, give these a little twist. Okay, so I actually went ahead and took off a little bit more insulation off the green, white, and black wires, just so I get real good contact in my plug head. I've twisted those together. Now, what we need to do is put the correct wire into my plug cap. So these are actually color coded. So you have a green screw here, a black screw here, and a silver screw here. So we're gonna do black with the black screw, green with the green screw, and white with the silver screw. Okay, good thing to check any wires right now, because if you can fix them pretty easily if they pop out. Now what we need to do is slide our plug end here up. We want to make sure that we're going to align the screws here with the screw housings in there, right there. So you know, it's a little finicky to get in, but you know you're in those screw housings when these are pushed up when you place that piece in there. Now you're just going to want to tighten those up a bit. Once you get them in there, sort of tighten them piece by piece there. Obviously you want to check it, push it, pulling it pretty good, make sure it's in there. Okay, now you may think you have a problem, or you may be concerned if you have those wires showing, but if it's not too much, it's actually not that bad of a thing, because what you can do is you can push those wires into the housing and actually provides a good amount of strain relief for the plug. So that's not a problem, but you do want to make sure you're crimping down on this larger insulation piece. So once you get everything in there, you're all set to start clamping down on that wire right there, that cord. Sometimes I like to come in with a flathead screwdriver just at the end and give those things another quarter turn if I can. Okay, now obviously you want to check that. Looks pretty good. Now the next thing you'd want to do is, depending on what this cord is going to, you may want to check the electrical integrity of this cord, especially this ground pin right here. So if you have some way to measure the electrical conductivity, do a resistance check between this prong and maybe a ground test point on your device. That's a really good idea. Obviously, if you're doing this for a consumer device, this may not be necessary, and it may not be easy, to find a location to test this. But if you're doing this on a medical device, you'd want to do a ground resistance check on this cord, and you'd want to run through your electrical safety tests for medical devices. And if you're not sure how to do that, I have a video on how to do electrical safety according to NFPA 99, so you want to check that out. All right, hopefully that was useful. Hopefully you now know how to replace the plug head of a cord, in particular the cord for a medical device. But this applies to any cord. You could do this on any cord you wanted to. You could just buy a cheaper plug head. All right, everyone, I hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure to stay safe around electricity. You don't want to get hurts.